All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to cover some notes real quick on the blood. This is going to lead into the cardiovascular system, which is dealing with your heart. But before that, we're just going to take a few days to talk about the blood in your body. I like this lesson a lot because we're going to talk about white blood cells. They keep you from getting sick. There's a lot of different types of white blood cells in your body, and they each do something kind of different. And I think that's really interesting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, how long does it take a drop of blood to travel away from the heart and back again? It's roughly under a minute. So that's kind of interesting. A red blood cell leaving your heart and travel all the way around your body through your blood vessels and come back to your heart in about under a minute. So before we get into the notes, let's go ahead and start talking about what makes up blood, right? It's the only fluid tissue, okay? It has these things called formed elements. So this is what you probably think of blood as looking like when you prick your finger and blood comes out. It's kind of just this red color. This tube has been sent through a machine called a centrifuge, which is a machine that just spins it around very, very, very quickly. It spins it around so fast and so long that it actually the blood is going to separate out into these different layers, okay? And it lets us kind of get a better understanding of what your blood is actually made out of. Up here at the top, about 55% is going to be plasma, which is just the watery substance that lets your red blood cells travel through your body, okay? This middle layer right here is called the buffy coat. It's going to be white blood cells and platelets. So this is going to be less than 1%, as you can see. White blood cells, that's what the WBC, and platelets. Platelets, another name for that is thrombocytes, and they help your wound heal. They clump up and stop blood from coming out of your body. So another name for white blood cells is leukocytes. Another name for platelets is thrombocytes. And another name for red blood cells is erythrocytes. And about 45% of your blood is just erythrocytes, as you can see right here. All right, moving on. This is kind of what a red blood cell looks like. It kind of looks like a donut with the hole not all the way punched out. It's kind of sunk down in the middle, but not punched all the way through there. So red blood cells, their scientific name is erythrocytes, and their main job is that they carry oxygen to other cells. They don't actually use up the oxygen themselves because they don't have any mitochondria. They just carry the oxygen around the body. All right. What you need to know off of this slide, red blood cell production is called hematopoiesis. We've talked about this a little bit earlier. Poiesis means formation of. Hemato is a word for blood, so this is the formation of blood. It's produced in the red bone marrow in bones, okay? And it's controlled by a hormone called erythropoietin. When your body's low on oxygen, your kidneys are going to make more erythropoietin, which increases hematopoiesis. When you have a lot of oxygen in your body, your kidneys are going to make less erythropoietin, which means you have less hematopoiesis going on, which means your body isn't making as much red blood cells. Okay, inside of red blood cells is this special chemical called hemoglobin, okay? And its job is that it's the thing inside of red blood cells that actually the oxygen is going to connect to it. Okay, so the function of hemoglobin is that it carries oxygen inside of the red blood cells. It contains iron. Low iron decreases your ability to transport oxygen. This is why, so the hemoglobin is made of, has iron in it. This is why if you ever cut your mouth, maybe flossing, and you taste it, it kind of has a metallic taste because there's actually iron in it. And each red blood cell has 4 oxygen molecules per hemoglobin. All right, some of you might already know this, but if you're anemic, you just have low iron. in your system, which means your body is not as good as transporting oxygen around around the body. Here are some sources of iron. If you ever are feeling a little under the weather and your doctor says you might be anemic. Okay, white blood cells. Another name for white blood cells is leukocytes. Leuko is a word for white. Cyte means cell, so this is literally a white cell. The job of the white blood cells is that they fight disease. Okay, they're going to stop things from entering in your body that aren't supposed to be there. Okay, there's two main groups of white blood cells. Okay, the first one is called granulocytes, which are white blood cells that have granules in it. Okay, and you're thinking, well, what are granules, right? Granules are these little dots all over the cells. Okay, when we stain them, they get kind of this polka dotted pattern to them, and we call them granulocytes. So if you see a white blood cell that has little dots in it, it's going to be called a granulocytes. There's three main types, and we're going to talk about them in just a second. The neutrophil, the eosinophil, and the basophil. These three are each types of granulocytes. The neutrophils are the most common. They are going to usually be purple just because of the color stain that we use. So they're going to be purple. And they also have a segmented nucleus. This dark purple right here, all of this, that's the cell's nucleus. The neutrophils are known for having a segmented nucleus. So as you can see here, these aren't even connected. These are maybe connected a little bit, but they're segmented and they're purple. Okay, they are the most mobile. They're the first to arrive. They fight off bacteria through phagocytosis, which means they just eat bacteria, basically. And their lifespan is only about 12 hours or until they've killed 24 bacteria. Okay, the next ones are going to be the eosinophils. These aren't quite as common. See, only 2 to 4% of all your white blood cells are going to be eosinophils. They attack parasites, and you can always tell these because they're going to kind of have a red coloration to them. Again, that's just because of the dye that we use. We'll use something called crystal violet for this one, and it kind of gives it this red color. So if you see something red, you're dealing with an eosinophil. All right, the next one's going to be a basophil. These are the rarest of the white blood cells. Okay, they release histamine, which causes inflammation and it prevents clots. How you can tell these apart from the other white blood cells is the basophil are just a bunch of dots. Okay, you can barely even tell what's going on because of how these granules stain. Okay, so just think basophil, bunch of dots. They both start with the letter B. That's going to help you kind of pick these out amongst the crowd. Okay, the next entire category of white blood cells are called agranulocytes. These are white blood cells without those granules, so these don't really have that polka dotted pattern to them as much. Okay, see, it's white blood cells lacking visible cytoplasmic granules. There's only two of these. The first one is the monocyte. These are going to be purple, and they have a kidney bean shaped nuclei. Okay, so if it's purple, if it's got a kidney bean shaped nuclei, it's going to be a monocyte. Okay, that's kind of the giveaway for these. And then the last one's called a lymphocyte. There's two kinds. You got B cells and T cells. We'll talk about that more later. What you need to know about these is the lymphocytes are very tiny compared to the other white blood cells, and it makes the nuclei look very large. So little cell, large nuclei, lymphocytes, they all start with the letter L. See how the majority of this cell is just being taken up by the lymphocytes nuclei. Interesting thing about lymphocytes, you may or may not have known this, HIV is the same disease as AIDS, it just isn't quite as bad yet. So HIV and AIDS are very similar diseases. One's just worse than the other. The cutoff point, how you tell if you have HIV or AIDS, is they'll just count the number of lymphocytes in your body. The lymphocytes are in charge of kind of remembering what type of bacteria you fought off. They're kind of the brains of the immune system. That's why their nuclei are so large. When you have AIDS, you'll have even less lymphocytes than someone with HIV. And what that does is when your immune system is that weak, any old common cold disease is going to be able to take you out because your immune system isn't quite as strong. Thank y'all so much for listening. Answer those questions below, and I hope y'all have a good day.